everybody, my name is Alexander. Let me start with a few words about myself. I'm from Belgian origin. I'm based in Paris. I'm a huge content marketing enthusiast. And after a couple of years at Unilever, spent the rest of my career at Pernod Ricard in a couple of different affiliates. For those of you who don't know Pernod Ricard, it was founded in the 70s and it's almost 50 years old. And since then it's grown quite significantly and mainly by external acquisitions. Today I work in Pernod Ricard's EMEA LATAM region of what is mostly, to explain it in one sentence, a complex and global organization. As you can see, it's the second biggest in the wines and spirits industry after Diageo. But to the subject of today, let's have a look at how we do digital marketing at Pernod Ricard. And where a better place to start than right now to start reflecting on what we did. So for a couple of years already, we've been on a quest for more transparency on data and actually having some of that knowledge as well inside our own group. So we've set up different internal teams, some on content creation, others on media buying. And of course, this has not only just increased our transparency, but it's made us more agile and all in all, quite important as well, allowed us to save a ton of money. The collaboration of these teams unlocks an immense potential for personalization and automation and has allowed us to reach the right consumer with the right content in the right context as well. The event that shouldn't be named has brought two major changes for us. One being the consumer being much more into e-commerce, and even those who don't really want to have been forced. And us as a company, it of course gives us much more conversion where traditional business has gone down during that period. E-commerce has exploded, but it's only also given us a lot of insights into those consumers. What are their purchase paths? What are their preferences online? Before, in the offline commercial channels, we had a lot of difficulty in gathering that much data. And now, of course, it's much more transparent and it's much more easy for us to gather that. And secondly, a culture that is open to much more innovation and testing, which has allowed us to make A/B testing, for example, in digital marketing commonplace. It sounds silly, but it's something that a lot of our agencies and even our internal teams didn't really do consistently. But let's get back to that later. Let's start with a brand establishing their voice globally. And of course, every time we want to do that, we have to take into account some local aspects in certain markets as well. Because of course, not everybody thinks and lives the same way. A lot of the content needs to be localized, and that's the same within Pernod Ricard. It cannot just be done by swapping out one language for another. We have to adapt to local cultures as well. And this parallel can also be drawn with short-term and long-term objectives. Let me use two examples of this. So the first one being last spring when we did a product launch on Kahlua Nitro Cold Brew. All of these assets that we've used were in 3D and by using stock material that we had from other previous campaigns, which made the production completely COVID friendly. Secondly, and one of my favorite examples, in the Netherlands, where the Malibu team developed an innovative out-of-home campaign, which allowed consumers to engage with the visual using augmented reality on their phones through Snapchat. Actually, also made by our friends at Go Spooky. It enabled consumers to play our Malibu tropical parkour game using the Lime out-of-home as a canvas. While waiting for bus, metro, tram, consumer was able to play the game by opening Snapchat and simply scanning a code on the out of home. With the Dutchies being quite limited, it was a fun way to think of something else for once. And to relay this message, we even created a couple of Snapchat filters in-house to bring this to life as well during King's Day. But let me just show you a very short video on what that looked like, so it's easier to imagine. And this also holds up in what we measure. If a localization approach and a better understanding of a market even yields 1% improvement in performance marketing, then that will be well worth it. Performance marketing is all about finding the edge. It's adjusting a creative, an audience, a placement to get just those extra views, engagements, and conversions. The long-term objective from a marketing perspective always remains the same through the ages. It's building brands, and therefore, obviously, we use brand equity as a key measure. Globally, this means rationalization on, for example, our agency roster, but also finding the balance between in and out house on a couple of initiatives. When we look at the priorities for this year, this is also reflected in our key projects. When I look at things like media optimization, for example, they have become part of the daily tools at Pernod Ricard, using basic frequency and audience optimization during campaigns, shifting budget from one creative to another. It's normal. Our objective, however, now is to get this natural behavior outside of just the digital team of experts and into the rest of the marketing team. It's important that they understand so they can make sure in the content that they prepare as well, that it's adapted to those uses and that we stay agile and fast in adapting that content for our campaigns. By submerging our senior management in a digital world our consumers already live in, we create an understanding between the world of digital, where we as performance marketers live, and that of the brand building marketers. The methodology that we use within the group, we call TLO, or Test, Learn, and Optimize, with new channels becoming available like Twitch, where we started targeting gamers, for example, in relevant campaigns like #InRealLife by Absolute, but also the live streams that we've done with all of our brands. We've used this TLO method, Test, Learn, Optimize, to adapt campaigns. So a quick example on what we've done for Valentine's in Poland, with a first ad that we made localized for the Polish audience that looked like this. Short and snappy, as a digital ad should be, but apparently not 100% adapted to the audience that we were showing it to. So on the third flight, we decided to adapt what we've learned from all the audiences and the ad placements that we had on, specifically in this case, Facebook and Instagram, and adapted the ad quite significantly by changing some of the music, being more straight to the point, and showing a collaboration that we did more significantly. So as you can see, it's a completely different ad. And this Test, Learn, Optimize during COVID has also allowed us to go a bit with the flow and to do a lot more experimenting. So we started by live streaming a couple of our local brand ambassadors that were making cocktails. We evolved into organizing DJ sets, live artist performance on a couple of our brands. And in the end, specifically on Martell, organized a couple of talks between global talents in music and fashion. And the environment allowed us that. We didn't have a big audience in the beginning. We could test a bit what worked, what didn't work, and evolved into those talks, knowing that it would attract the right audience for our brands. Obviously, everybody is looking into data these days as well. Specifically for us, it can be used in targeting, but specifically in performance marketing, by understanding a consumer and channel. The insights specifically that we get from search, for example, can feed into our own channels. If we look at Havana Club in this case, we of course want to tell everybody about our sexy new cocktail called the Cancha, which honestly nobody has ever heard of. But instead, the cocktail that we would promote would be a boring old mojito, because that there is always, and there has always been quite a significant search traffic on that topic. And so it's up to us to own that topic as well. And if people search for it, that they fall onto our website. And then it's much easier for us to convince them later on to drink a dark and stormy or specifically a Cancha when we retarget them in a follow-up campaign. Talking about targeting, the other London Take a Stand is an example of a campaign that we did for Absolute in the UK, just switching out the city in which people live according to our targeting. In this Absolute ad called The Drop of Love. And this has allowed us to increase ad recall with 35%, which is quite significantly increased just by changing one word in the different videos. So this is something that we've done a lot more, of course. Then looking at content personalization, also quite an important topic for us. We distinguish two different types, one being more content related, the other being more media related. Since we just gave an example on the latter with the Absolute Drop of Love campaign, let me introduce to you our main asset for the first. It's called The Mix, which is our in-house studios. And of course, key advantages of in-housing are known to most people by now. And for us, what stands out is the fact that they have a broad and very strong brand understanding. Of course, when we have ongoing conversations with the brand teams, that's key that the designers, the social media specialists, that they really have a close connection with the brand teams, because in agencies in the past we've always had a couple of account managers in between, and now because they live and breathe the brands, they can react much quicker as well. And they can adapt this to digital media buying, but also CRM, e-commerce, trade marketing, and they can go across different departments as well to create content. And an obvious one is cost effectiveness versus agencies. In the case of The Mix, depending on the need of a brand or a country, they can also tackle different challenges. And as you see on this slide, they can tackle full creative campaigns from the idea, like you see on the right on Jameson Caskmates, but also parts of campaigns like online banners, packaging, or a set of gifts. All these assets, by the way, have won global awards or local awards. And to personalize this content to specific markets, we use our digital asset manager, or DAM, which is called Binder. And to eliminate duplicate efforts in regions or across brands, we introduce templates so everybody can localize. Our teams from The Mix don't just upload a set of JPEGs, and rather they use templates or they use PSDs if you need to create something locally. So everybody has access to that, and everybody can focus on their key brands in key messages on a local term. Of course, e-commerce has presented a huge opportunity, specifically in the last year. And of course, the sales of that have boomed significantly. But it's the entire online purchase decision cycle that has become so much more important to us, because it's become much shorter as well. For instance, the lockdown in China has seen a rise in live streamed events. Last year in February alone, Taobao, the platform which is already the biggest in terms of live streaming, saw an increase of 700% in new sellers across the country. So a couple of drinks brands got together and launched live DJ sets on the marketplace JD.com, actually delivering beverages right to the consumers' homes. And I know that in EMEA, live streaming sales might not have taken off as much yet, but after Pinterest and TikTok, now Facebook has just announced that they will add e-commerce features to their platforms as well. And in this context, we as Pernod Ricard have started using influencers for more conversion campaigns. And in the past, this was more just used for simple awareness, sending an influencer a bottle, having them put it online. Perfect for product launches, but it doesn't go much further than that. And now through personalized links, but also by identifying influencers in existing e-commerce clients, we can have much more authentic promotion and actually make that lead into conversion as well. And that's where a lot of changed for the better for us. And we can say that COVID has been an opportunity for Pernod Ricard as well. And then last, to close on the name of our team internally, which was the Digital Marketing Acceleration Team, we can now say that the word acceleration is redundant by making sure that digital will be at the heart of marketing. Our objective by 2023 is to make the word digital unnecessary as well. Because at that point, we'll be able to say that marketing is digital and digital is marketing as well. Thank you so much for your attention. This has been Alexander Somville, and have a nice day.
Hello, Alexander. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting, and it's especially interesting to see how brands that are especially challenged by the pandemic, grow and change and experiment, like you were saying. At first, I had a technical question. When you talk about conversions, what does that mean for a liquor company? What is a conversion in a at-home pandemic situation?
That's a very good question, because a couple of years ago, I would have probably answered to you that it's people subscribing to our newsletter or somebody showing interest to our website. And now, given the increase of e-commerce, we're really always trying to tie this into actual bottle sales, which are now much bigger in terms of volume as well on e-commerce. So we're going from, I don't know the exact numbers by heart, 2% a couple of years ago to 8% of the total business today. So that's quite a significant increase for us globally.
But you're not talking about an individual decision, a purchase made by a consumer, because I would find that hard to track.
No. I'm talking about the bigger scale.
Aggregate numbers.
Our volume versus offline.
Okay,
of
sure.
course, when we own the e-commerce channels, then it's easier, and then we can track on a consumer level.
Sure, of course. Okay, so it was exciting to see you talk about go from experimentation. You go from live streaming of cocktails to online music events. What's the next? What's the post-pandemic lesson that you can take away from that sort of experimentation? What from the pandemic will continue in the post-pandemic? Aside from the philosophy. Yeah.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And the philosophy might not always stay, to be honest, because the experimentation was really helpful during the time of the pandemic, because nobody was judging you. As long as you weren't using the pandemic as an excuse to do marketing, nobody was judging you if you did a live stream and you didn't know what to say at the first 5 minutes, or it was a bit awkward between the contendants, because it was awkward for everybody.
Right.
What we really take with us is the conversion that you asked in the first question, making sure that we tie everything to a specific consumer, and we start talking about consumer lifetime value, KPIs versus direct bottle sales.
We had some women yesterday from Desperados, and they were also facing some similar challenges. Is there any life to the idea of at-home small-scale social activities, or are those going to drop away once we can go back to bars, back to parties, back to festivals?
In all honesty, they'll definitely diminish and be a lot less present than they are today. What will help, and that also counts for events, is that you won't necessarily always need to be there. So there's a bit of a drop in FOMO, where people are going to be able to be present at events without necessarily living in that specific city. And that's also something that we see, for example, in the festivals that we work with, such as Tomorrowland, who have had a very successful edition completely online. And they've already told us that even when they would be able to go back to the offline, so actual real life events, that they'll still be able to use the digital version to scale. And that's really important when you can touch a lot more consumers than you would have in an offline event, especially when you do a tasting for 5 people, that when you broadcast it reaches so many more.
I just wonder if we need some sort of hybrid middle step or something, because maybe you're not at that party, but you need to be at a party. You know, maybe we need small 100-person, 500-person events in cities where you watch the live event at least together in a party situation. I'm just so skeptical when I hear about these at-home situations. I just go, it doesn't speak to me as a consumer myself. I wonder if there's some way to get to that place.
I have to admit that I'm not a huge consumer of parties at my home as well. But what I see when I look at friends, and especially at younger consumers, that concepts like Boiler Room have been working so well already for years now. And a bit similar to like the e-commerce thing is that at-home parties, or at least live streaming of parties, and then showing that in-house when you have 10 friends and using that as music. It's a matter of getting used to it. And now people were forced, so they have the habit in their blood, and they will continue doing that, I'm sure.
Okay. Let me dig in a little bit on this localization idea, since I think that's very relevant to a lot of people watching here today. It was a shocking number that you quoted about, changing the city got so much more, recollection. One is, will that pass quickly as we, obviously when a band, comes to town and says, I love coming to Amsterdam, we go, woo, but, I have a feeling they also love going to every city they play. Is that going to get more sophisticated, or are you already seeing that happening? Like, you can't, we get Google ads now that says, a pilot in Amsterdam got rich with this trick that they don't want you to know. And I go, just because you threw Amsterdam in there, I'm not falling for it. What's the next level of that localization? I'd honestly advocate to keep it simple. And the downside is that for years and years, we've seen people with that trick that your chiropractor doesn't want you to know, or 5 ways to get rich in 5 minutes. And there's been so many weird YouTube pre-rolls, so many weird banner ads that people don't have faith in something if it's too complicated. And we've actually seen it a couple of years back when we did the mobile campaign, when we showed ads around specific bars where people were close to, that maybe we were going a bridge too far and saying, oh, you're in the neighborhood of this specific bar, why don't you drop by to have an amazing absolute tonic, for example. And we didn't have as much feedback on that as if we hoped. Whereas if it's just in an ad and it's just simple, showing a different product or a different cocktail combination, for example, then people won't really notice that it's personalized for them. If it's a simple thing like a city, then it strikes a sense of pride in people. So you don't have to look that far, and it doesn't have to be too complicated. Just make it relevant for your ad. But, I wonder if, though, because other speakers today have made similar points about personalization being creepy, and I wonder if the bar situation is because it's not your bar or it's not your kind of bar. Like, I don't just go to the geographically closest bar to where I'm standing. Wouldn't that be nice if that positioning worked? But if you could find, I figure out who I am and where I like to go, and then send me a bar that I actually would like or do go to, or, seems right for me, I would argue that would be appealing.
And that's key. It's the segmentation of your consumers. And of course, there's been some ups and downs in that, and it's not necessarily going to get easier in the cookieless world in a couple of years. But that's why we are also driving a lot of our markets to start collecting first-party data and to be able to do that in a much better way. And then we can focus on, your preferred cocktail or your preferred bar because you tell us that's your preferred bar, and not necessarily because we have any creepy algorithm that's going to define your specific bar that you should love.
That's interesting. We only have 1 minute, so there's no way you can answer this. So here's the impossible question. But why do people hate seeing advertisements that aren't for them? Like, I'm not in the market for a car, so that impression is wasted on me. But they don't want to have targeted ads. And people opted out 90% for the Facebook rules, So how come the industry can't either convince me or connect with me, which is, it seems like I personally do, and most people should want to have tailored experiences, but somehow there's a disconnect and they don't appear to. What does that mean? What's the meaning there? In 1 minute.
But the problem is, in 1 minute, the problem is there's a very thin line between invading somebody's privacy and really helping them out. And like I said before, there's been so much abuse that people have just stopped trusting platforms like a Facebook, for example. And that's when you need to step up as brands and start asking some questions to your consumers and just use those insights to personalize content, not necessarily too much in detail, but just enough so it's an added value. And that's key. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest or the strongest part of a brand identity, but it has to have that competitive edge towards your consumer. And he should be in control.
Fantastic. Consumer should be in control. We'll end it there. Thank you very much for your time. It was very interesting.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.